And Mirza and I together decided to have this, let's say, 20 minutes talk, but it won't be talk, it's more like a workshop. Because now, after this, you have presentations, right? Yeah, so I would kindly ask you all to come closer. Just put your papers, everything down, you don't need it, and come closer to me. Because this is mostly for you who are going to present in next few minutes, hours. Just come closer, come here, so I can... Yeah, I'm too small for that. Actually, I do have black belt. We don't talk about that. Okay, come closer. So, which one of you are presenting? You do all the presentation after? Or there are some members of the group who will present? Yeah. All of you. Is there anybody?
In our case, all of us.
Yeah. No one skipped presentations.
I will be stone.
You'll be on sound.
Stone.
Ne smetiš.
Ah, okay.
I will just
You don't talk.
Inactive.
No, if somebody asks me something, yes, I will replay, but that's all.
Okay, so now the question for all of you. So who has the stage fright?
What?
Only you, two of you. Only stage fright. So who is afraid of public speech? That's the question. That's why you're so okay.
I speak, but I'm scared.
You're scared. That's fine. Okay, let's be honest. There are some of you who are not. That's a great thing to hear. But that's, let's say, fear of public speaking. That's normal. That's human. You heard a lot about fear this morning, and that's true. Because maybe our society has evolved, but our brain hasn't. It's still in decay. So it's afraid in the same way from the public speaking as it was from the lion or bear or something. So it's the same mechanism. That's the same fear. That's the biggest energy that drives us through the world and through the life. And it's okay to be afraid. That's the main point of everything I'm going to say today. And that's why I put these two black circles. And I'm going to ask you, my mouse over this. What is the worst thing that can happen and the best thing that can happen on your presentation?
The worst thing for me, I do not speak very well English. That's my fear.
That's your fear.
The
Okay.
best thing, yay, I can speak.
You overcome your fear.
It's just my perspective, nothing else. But for me, really, it's big problem because I don't speak on English, and then I must think, how will I say that? Did I use right expression? Similar things.
That's fine. Any other example? Not just English. Something that can happen to all of us.
That you'll be embarrassed.
You'll be embarrassed. That's maybe the biggest fear. Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, or you can't answer a question. Like,
You don't know the
pick
answer.
up the talk, it once happened to me, and like, oh, I didn't read this one paper, they were asking like one question, but it was totally obviously.
Yes. That can be embarrassing moment too.
Well, I mean, I don't have stage fright exactly. I just, when I talk, it doesn't matter where I have that feeling that I may say something in a wrong way, and something that can be taken differently depending on a person, and that will get blown out of proportion and maybe even get embarrassed, but just to not be understood correctly.
I had a speech impediment, so worst thing that can happen is returns momentarily when I start to speak.
Trip and fall. Yeah.
I mean,
Has it happened to anyone? That you trip and fall on the stage?
Yes.
once almost fainted.
Okay.
I was so nervous, was on price, whatever.
Yes, there are a lot of bad things that can happen, but remember, I asked you two questions. What is the worst thing that can happen, and what's the best thing that can happen? And most of you, in a moment, remember the bad thing. Only you gave a good example. Most of you went to the black circle and you stayed there. And we talked about black circle for 2-3 minutes and we haven't mentioned any good white example.
And why is black bad and white good?
That's something that I want to mention. Okay, so I mentioned some of mine and some obvious things that can happen. That's technical failure, forgetting the text, stuttering, stumbling and falling, audience laughing after all, etc., etc., and everything that you mentioned already. There are so many bad things that can come up into our mind and we think that might happen. And there is only one thing in the white circle. Everything goes as planned. So that's something that we all wish for. We tried our presentation so many times and we know how it has to look like. So there's only one thing. If it goes as planned, that's fine. We have it all. Okay. So we do have those two important circles. But our mind is really special. It's still in the cave. That's something important that you need to remember all the time. And it always goes to the black circle. But that's not reality. You are mostly focused on the bad thing, but that's not the whole talk. So I went to Google and just tried to figure out how many words is in 10 minutes talk. So that will be somewhere around your talks today, yeah, 20 minutes per person, something like that. So there is 1,300 words in 10-minute talk. Okay, so when you have some kind of irrational fear that was placed in that black circle, the biggest thing, most important thing that you have to do is ground yourself in reality. Go somewhere real. So what's real? Most of you are STEM, somewhere in STEM, yes, so you know the math, you're good with numbers. That's why I decided to do this with numbers. Those are some bad things that can happen, and that's the number of words said in that way. Let's say you stuttered one sentence, that's around 10 words. You turned your back while talking, which we all know is not a great thing, but you only did it for 3 sentences. You might be indistinguishable your talk for, let's say, 8 sentences, which is around 80 words. So how much of that is in percentage? So stuttering, 10 words, 0.7. Turning your back while talking, which I'm just doing, is around 2%. Speaking indistinctly, 6.2%. It's around 9% of your whole talk. That's the math. But your brain works in a different way. It will only focus on that 9%, and that's the only thing that you remember after your talk, how you stuttered that important sentence. And you'll forget about the rest of it. That's how our brain works. It's really simple math. But then I'll ask you, when you get 91% score on your exam, are you happy? So when you get 91% score at your exam on university, are you happy with that number?
Yes.
Minimal 95.
Minimal 95. So that score is actually excellent, great. In Croatia, maybe most of your universities, it's around very good to excellent. So when you do the math, when you think of your talks that you just did, you are around 90%, which is excellent. It doesn't have to be perfect to be excellent. That's the main message here. That's something that I wanted to share with you. Not to focus on these little things that might happen, but to focus on the whole speech. Around 90% that actually was very good. And the important thing is, between this black circle and this white circle, there is a large gray area. So not everything in life is white or black. It doesn't have to be perfect or very bad. It's somewhere in between. And most of your public speaking is around 90 to 80% of greatness, let's say like that. That's where you are. Even if you feel bad and you're not happy with your performance and you might think it should be better than that, you are around 90% of goodness, greatness, whatever you like as your mark. So that's something I want you all to keep in mind in the next minutes, hours, when you will be giving your own speeches. Oh, closer this technical failure. Do it like this.
This is the bad thing.
Yes, that's one of the bad things, but it's not so bad, is it?
Yeah, it's
Nothing
white.
happened.
Yeah, it's white, the screen. So not so bad.
Okay. But this is what our brain does. It always has those what ifs, what ifs, what ifs. What if the worst scenario happens to me? So what then? Now I would like to ask you all, you don't have to share it with me, just do it yourself. Try to remember really, really embarrassing moment that you had previously with public speaking. Some of you shared your moments. Do you all have it in your mind?
Yeah, once when I was preparing the presentation for the students and the faculty, I put the wrong picture in the presentation, and that picture was like on vacation, and I was talking about like dance with trumpets. So yeah, it was a bit embarrassing, but okay, we go through it.
You go through it and you laugh.
They all laughed, and I laughed myself. So.
And yes, it's embarrassing in that particular moment, but after some time, it's something that you laugh to. Yeah. So you all have that moment, and you all went there right now, haven't you? Do you have it? You don't have it at all. Nothing embarrassing happened to you. Now is the good time.
He regrets
Now it's
it.
embarrassing.
You will not
That's
watch our
embarrassing.
presentations.
Okay. Yes.
I had when my heel stayed in a week on the floor, and I just was walking in without them.
Yes, that's why I'm very.
It was
sleepy.
very funny, but I used that moment for myself. That presentation. It was good.
Yes. Afterwards, that's something you remember and laugh to. But now I'll ask you all. So some of you do have embarrassing moments, some of you may not. But can you remember an embarrassing moment of your, let's say, best college, university friend? Can you remember him, their embarrassing moment? So pick a person that you spent 4 years sitting next to, drank all coffees and everything, and try to remember their most embarrassing moment. Do you have it? It takes time, doesn't it? Mostly you'll remember yours immediately, but when I ask you to do that for some other person, it takes much more time. And that's the final fact. That people have very bad memory. That's the final fact that you have to keep in mind. So people won't remember. If something embarrassing happens to you, they won't remember mostly because they're focused on themselves at that point. That's the biggest fact about humanity. Especially in the moments like this, when a lot of you has to give a public speech and all of you have to share something. So you are now, in this moment, like two of them, mostly focused on their presentation than what I'm talking about. And that's how the things are. Just keep that in mind, and it will be much, much easier for each conference or public talk that you have to do next. Okay? So, this is also important life fact, that we are mostly focused on our own embarrassment, not on the other people. Maybe we laugh to them, but we are mostly focused on ourselves, which is fine, which is completely okay. Just keep that in mind when you're giving public talk. And I just summed up those 3 important facts: that people have bad memory, that everyone is focused on themselves. I know they sound very rough like this, but those are the facts. And that the only person that you actually need to satisfy is yourself. So if you think that you did a good job, you actually did it, because you are the only person that will remember most of it. Other people will maybe remember a sentence or 2 or something like that, but you are the only person that keeps that memory alive. So you are the person that needs to be satisfied. And you have to be satisfied with 90%, which is excellent. And that's the short talk that I wanted to give you in front of you.